That day marked me. It wasn't the first. It definitely won't be the last. I've had many other moments since. But I cannot deny the power of God's presence and how it steps into a space to bring transformation to our life, to reveal Himself, His ways, His truth, so that we can have the deepest places of our heart restored, revived, reinvigorated, refreshed. Welcome to the Igniting Hearts podcast, where raw and unfiltered conversations spark healing, freedom, and purpose. This is a space for you to fuel your faith and ignite your heart so you can walk out each day courageously. Friend, I'm your host, Kirsten Clegg, and I'm an author and mentor who is passionate about seeing people walk in their God-given identity. Join me and others for an impactful conversation that is sure to inspire you to live fully, love deeply, and carry God's hope into every part of your world. After all, you were designed with destiny in your DNA. Hello and welcome to Igniting Hearts podcast, where real stories spark faith and fuel purpose. I'm your host, Kirsten Clegg, and I am so excited for you to join me today. Today, I want to share why I'm doing this podcast because it has a background story, and I thought it would be a really fun way to open up this season of Igniting Heart podcast. It exists to share the real God stories and honest conversations that will awaken your heart, fuel your faith, and help you live from purpose. You know, there was a time in my life where I had 3 children under the age of 2. Yes, I had twins right after my son turned 20 months. And so I had 3 in diapers for a little while. I can honestly say there were crazy busy moments. And in the middle of normal life with toddlers, babies, diapers, laundry, I also had the tasks of leadership at church and ministry opportunities and all of the things that were piling on my calendar. And I knew that there were moments that needed to be made, spaces for me to recharge. And so I would take time out and I would listen to podcasts. I would listen to worship music. I would listen to sermon tapes. And I would give myself a chance during the busyness of it all to have a little hope deposited. Well, that's what Igniting Hearts podcast is all about. It's that space and that place for you to get a little recharge. It's that place and space where you get a chance to move past the disappointments and the delays and the busyness of your everyday life and find the extraordinary that takes place in the middle of the ordinary. Those majestic moments in the middle of the mundane. I want to see you get breakthroughs so that you can leave not only inspired, but seen and equipped to walk boldly in your calling. One day, years ago, when my children were little, I was taking a lunch break and I had them all down for a nap, and I was in the middle of folding laundry, but knew I needed to take some recharge time. And so I sat down with my lunch at my desk and began eating probably a turkey or a peanut butter jelly sandwich. Nothing exciting. Now, this was a time when, yes, cassette tapes were being played. And before CDs, before streaming, before all the things, I put that tape into the cassette player, pushed play, and ate my lunch. And, you know, I don't remember the message or the main points. I do remember hearing the sound. You know, it's now almost 20 years later, but I remember it like it was yesterday. And this wind, this sound came from the cassette tape. And I can remember hearing mid-bite the audience responding to the presence of God. And though I wasn't physically in the same room and I was listening to their experience months or years later, I could feel the presence of God coming from their space and stepping into mine. I know that kind of sounds odd, but It's the best way to describe it. I could feel the presence of God stepping into my room. And there's something about the love of God and the joy of the Lord and the power of his presence that is not limited by time or space, but he's able to step into ordinary moments and do something within us. And in that moment, I didn't finish my lunch. I don't even think I finished my bite. I just remember being so overwhelmed by God's love. And I was awestruck, the majesty of who he is. The tears, even now, tears began falling down my face and all over my half-eaten sandwich. And instinctively, I got up out of my chair and I fell on my face. My face planted in the carpet, tears running down my face. I laid on my floor just in awe of God's incredible goodness. That day marked me. It wasn't the first. It definitely won't be the last. I've had many other moments since. But I cannot deny the power of God's presence and how it steps into a space to bring transformation to our life, to reveal himself, his ways, his truth, so that we can have the deepest places of our heart restored, revived, reinvigorated, refreshed. That is what we're talking about. It's often that God steps into our normal everyday life, our normal everyday situations, and breathes life into our heart and into our mind, but it requires us becoming aware. God was stepping in, just like he did that day on the road to Emmaus. There's a story in the New Testament that talks about two men who had just seen what had transpired over the last few days. Jesus, who they thought was the Messiah, had been brutally beaten. He had been crucified on a cross and he had been buried in a tomb. And there they walked away disappointed, discouraged, and full of sorrow. The Bible talks about this in the book of Luke. And during their conversation, they are walking to the next village and they're talking about what had taken place and they're talking about their frustrations and they're talking about the what ifs and they're talking about all of the things that they were hoping for. And in the middle of their normal conversation, Jesus drew himself in and began walking with them. Although they didn't know it was him, their eyes were restrained, the scriptures say, not knowing that he was standing beside them. But here they walk, talking about the events that took place. And during this normal conversation, Jesus begins to reveal truth through stories they're familiar with, facts that they were accustomed to. They had grown up learning the scriptures and knowing that one day a Messiah would come. They knew that Jesus was a prophet and they knew that he was powerful. They had seen him do mighty things and they knew he was crucified, and their hope was that he would be the promised one who would redeem Israel. And so as they were talking about the situation and hearing the truth of scripture be revealed through this visitor who had joined them on the road, they began to have their hearts stirred. But it wasn't until they got to the next village and they were invited to sit and dine with this visitor. And there in that place, their eyes were opened as Jesus broke bread and they began to see that it was not just a stranger who had been walking with them, but the Messiah, Jesus, the Redeemer, the Word who became flesh and dwelt among them. They looked at him and said, "Did not our heart burn within us while he talked with us on the road and while he opened the scriptures to us?" You see, during these conversations, during these moments of normal everyday life, amidst the busyness, traveling from one place to the next, in the middle of the laundry, in the middle of the dishes, in the middle of the carpool runs, in the middle of traveling to work, in the middle of the commute, a conversation can occur and Jesus can stir our faith. In the middle of the busyness, in the middle of the mundane, God steps in and wants to ignite our hearts so they can burn within us as we encounter the one who is truth. That's what Igniting Hearts podcast is all about. Every week, you're going to get to hear the real, raw, unfiltered conversations that I get to have with some of my guests, or insights and revelations that will take place through our time together. And here's the thing. You will get to come in to the space feeling one way and leave with a greater awareness of who God is and who you are in Him. You know, I live in a city and all around us, roundabouts are being put in. Downtown areas and back streets, they're creating these places where you can enter in and then exit through one of the other access points. Well, if you've ever been in a roundabout, you know that you could continue to circle. You don't have to exit off at any one point, but eventually, if you really want to get somewhere, you do. And I believe that our conversations are going to give you space to sit and hear encouragement and truth, inspiration and miracles and testimonies of struggles and victories, where you're going to be able to sit in that space and then exit into your life, carrying with you something, a nugget of truth or a transformation or an encounter with the one who is truth himself. You see, I believe that truth leads us into an encounter with who he is. Truth and revelation leads us to a place where we understand more of who God is and more of what he's calling us into. And on the flip side of that, just like that roundabout, we could enter in through an encounter with his love or an experience with his goodness or an encounter with his provision. And as we sit in it and meditate on what he's done, it then gives us permission to exit into a space where we have a greater awareness and a greater transformation in our heart of his truth and his revelation. I believe that revelation leads to encounter, and encounter leads back into revelation. And so this time together on Igniting Hearts podcast is space for you to do just that. It's space for you to enter in through stories, through testimonies, and exit with deeper awareness of who God is and what he's calling you into. It's a place where normal, ordinary people get to share extraordinary things. I'm your host, Kirsten Clegg. I'm an author and a mentor and a minister working inside and outside the walls of the church. After decades of real life and ministry, I have a passion for people to see the truth of who God has made them to be. I believe that we were created with destiny in our DNA, and I've seen how God shows up for the one, but also for the many, to step into an awareness of our God-given identity so that we can fulfill our purpose here in this world. There's something powerful about partnering with what is possible, not getting stuck in our current situations, but living from a place that is far greater. That's why Igniting Hearts podcast exists. And I can't wait for you to join me on our next episode. Like or subscribe so that you know when our next podcast episode drops. See you back here soon.